There's nothing quite like the taste of a homemade dessert, especially when it's one that has been passed down through generations. And let's be honest, no one brought these recipes to life like sweet old grandma. Let's start the video with everyone's favorite peach cobbler. Whether made with fresh, juicy peaches at the height of summer or canned peaches during the off-season, this dessert never failed to bring warmth to the table. Grandmas have always been great at making those labor-intensive meals, but this one was a laid-back treat that they whipped up in minutes. Yeah, even you can make it. Just take a few peaches, toss them with sugar and spices, and top with dollops of biscuit dough. This one was served best with a side of vanilla ice cream. Some grandmas even added a splash of bourbon to make the cobbler extra special. Plus, this dessert became so popular that there is even a day dedicated to it. April 13th is National Peach Cobbler Day in the United States, so mark your calendars and call your grandmas for some childhood nostalgia. Speaking of nostalgia, nothing brings back childhood memories of visiting Grams quite like some old-fashioned bread pudding. Every time there was stale bread on the counter, we knew Grandma was going to make some delicious bread pudding. This dessert became known as poor man's pudding because it was affordable. The best part about this one? You could add your own twist with toppings like raisins, chocolate chips, nuts, or fruit. While Grandma's bread pudding might have a classic American twist, this dish had international cousins. In France, it was known as pain perdu, which meant lost bread. In the UK, it was sometimes called bread and butter pudding. And in Mexico, there was a version called capirotada, which was traditionally eaten during Lent. Sadly, we're in the era of croissants and pastries, and this simple sweet treat can't compete with the fancies. Still, if you've got some bread, milk, and sugar at home, there's no better or easier way to use up the leftovers. Dust off your grandma's old cookbooks, and you might just find her exact secret recipe. We've got all sorts of fancy pies nowadays, from chocolate hazelnut mousse to blackberry merlot, but Grandma's banana cream pie was the talk of the town in the 60s. Do you remember coming home to a chilly slice of this delicacy? This one was a guaranteed crowd pleaser, and that's why it was the star of the table during the holidays. Here's the thing, bananas were very readily available in the US in the 1950s till 1960s, which means people had to come up with creative ways of eating them. And well, grandmas know best, especially when it comes to hearty desserts. The post-World War II era saw a boom in convenience foods and desserts that were easy to make at home, and banana cream pie fit perfectly into this trend. This wasn't just your favorite dessert. It was reportedly a favorite of President Harry S. Truman, who had a sweet tooth for simple, homey desserts. There was also a no-bake version of the banana cream pie, perfect for summer days when turning on the oven wasn't ideal. Many great things have come out of Alaska, but nothing beats the baked Alaska Grandma would bring home on the weekends. If it doesn't ring a bell, let me jog up your memory really quickly. This dessert was made of ice cream placed in a pie dish, lined with slices of sponge cake or Christmas pudding, and topped with meringue. Now, don't let the name fool you. This delicacy didn't really originate in Alaska. Yeah, it was made at the famous Delmonico's restaurant in New York City. The dessert was supposedly named Alaska, Florida, in 1867 to celebrate the United States purchase of Alaska from Russia, with the cold ice cream representing Alaska and the warm, baked meringue representing the sunny state of Florida. This one is known for its dramatic presentation. It was brought to the table aflame with a flambe. Many grandmas love to make baked Alaska for special occasions because of its wow factor. Now, not all of us had a sweet tooth growing up, but you know grandmas, they had something for everyone. And lemon meringue pie was the dessert of our dreams. It wasn't too sugary, just the right balance of tart and sweet. The pie that we knew growing up was believed to have evolved from two earlier desserts, the lemon custard pie and meringue-topped desserts. The lemon meringue pie consisted of a shortened pastry base filled with lemon curd and topped with meringue. This dessert became all the rage during the Victorian era, which made it one of the luxury dessert options of the time. But you know how our grandmas loved spoiling us, and she was always ready to whip up labor-intensive meals as long as they brought a smile to our faces. Plus, this one was also one of the healthier desserts. Yeah, thanks to the lemon's vitamin C and the absence of heavy creams and custard. It doesn't really get better than this, does it? Well, rice pudding is also one that wasn't just delicious, but also healthy. Don't you love it when sweet treats come with health benefits? Talk about a good deal. So, I'm sure I don't need to get into the nitty-gritty of this one because who doesn't remember the taste of rice pudding? It started out as a way to use up leftover rice and soon became the dessert that had everyone coming back for seconds. Not only this, but rice pudding was one of the easiest desserts to make and was made with ingredients easily found around the house like rice, milk, and sugar. Rice pudding originated in Europe and was brought to the States by European immigrants. Our grandmas decide to take the classic dessert up a notch by adding some key ingredients like vanilla, nutmeg, maple syrup, or cinnamon. Now, with the change in tastes and trends, this one never made it to big restaurants, but let's be honest, Grandma made it better than any Michelin star chef could possibly have. It's something about making sweet treats with a whole lot less sugar and a whole lot more love. You can't possibly have a conversation about forgotten grandma desserts and not bring up the infamous Blackberry Cobbler. This one was a summer favorite when blackberries were in season and at their peak of flavor. So, cobblers have their roots in early American history. Pioneers who traveled across the country had to make do with what they had, and traditional pies were difficult to bake on the road. Instead, they would cover the fruit with a layer of biscuit dough or batter and cook it in a Dutch oven, creating what we now know as a cobbler. The blackberries didn't only give the cobbler some flavor, but also packed it with antioxidants. This dessert was particularly famous in southern states and was a staple at many southern family gatherings, church picnics, and barbecues. Okay, so this next dessert's reputation speaks for itself. I'm talking about Snickerdoodle Cookies. This bad boy was timeless. You could be 5 or you could be 45 and still enjoy the soft, chewy Snickerdoodles coated in cinnamon sugar, which gave them a sweet, slightly spicy flavor. And trust me, it was impossible to resist. Snickerdoodles are considered a classic American cookie, with a history that dates back to the late 1800s. 2 centuries later, they're still a fan favorite. Now, you could get these at many popular bakeries, but nothing beats what Granny whipped up in minutes back in the day. This biscuit was the star of Grandma's cookie jar, and always the first one to disappear. Next up, we gave the Rhubarb Pie. This is another one of Grandma's treats that wasn't too sweet or heavy on the stomach. It was a springtime hit made with fresh rhubarb sugar and often a touch of cinnamon or nutmeg. Rhubarb grows abundantly in gardens, and this recipe was the perfect way to use it up and celebrate the flavors of the season. Remember when we'd wait all year long for spring to come just for a slice of this one? Well, some grandmas canned or froze the rhubarb to use throughout the year. Rhubarb is naturally quite tart and can be too sour to eat raw. In pies, it was typically paired with sugar to create a more palatable and balanced flavor. Grandmas often experimented with different amounts of sugar and other ingredients like strawberries to complement the tartness of rhubarb. Since we're on the topic of pies, cherry pie was another one of Grandma's culinary masterpieces. This was the kind of dessert that made any bad day 10 times better with just one bite. Traditionally, cherry pie was made with sour cherries rather than sweet cherries. Morello cherries were one of the most common kinds of cherry used, but other varieties such as the black cherry were also popular. So, cherry pie is considered one of the most iconic pies in America, second to only apple pie. There's a famous story about young George Washington chopping down a cherry tree and then confessing to it saying, "I cannot tell a lie." Legend says this cemented the importance of cherry in American history and inspired our grandmas to add the fruit to their delicious desserts and meals. Cherry salad was another popular dessert back in the day. Okay, so this next one was a staple on Grandma's dinner table during the holidays. Yeah, I'm talking about the spice cake. Come on, there's no way you don't remember this bad boy. Spice cake had been a beloved dessert for centuries, with origins tracing back to medieval Europe. The use of spices like cinnamon, nutmeg, and cloves in cakes became popular during the 18th and 19th centuries after these ingredients were brought to America. Someone's grandma decided to add spices to an old-fashioned cake batter, and let's just say we're extremely grateful for it. This cake shaped many childhoods as its aroma marked the start of fall and holiday season. From Thanksgiving days to Christmas mornings, this one was always sitting in the kitchen for anyone who wanted a taste of the season. I think it's fair to say that apples were a crucial part of whipping up desserts back in the day. But hey, apple pie wasn't the only sweet treat we got out of this fruit. Remember Grandma's apple dumplings? These were made by wrapping a whole or sliced apple in dough and then baking it until golden brown. And Grandma's apple syrup topping was like cherry on top. This was a labor-intensive dessert, which is pretty much why it's associated with Grandma's kitchen. The process of peeling, coring, and stuffing the apples and then carefully wrapping them in dough was a true labor of love. This one was commonly enjoyed as a dessert, but no one judged you if you ate it as breakfast. I mean, pair it with a cup of coffee and your taste buds will thank you. You and I both know this list would be incomplete without the mention of classic Whoopi Pies. Now, these come with an interesting origin story. Whoopi Pies are believed to have originated in the northeastern United States, particularly in Pennsylvania Dutch country, or Maine. According to legend, when Amish women would bake these treats, their husbands or children would exclaim, "Whoopie!" upon finding them in their lunch pails. And let's be honest, we all did that little whoopee when we sighted this one in our grandma's fridge. So these were a perfect cross between a cake and a cookie. But despite their name, they were more like mini cakes than actual pies. These were the best on-the-go treats that you could just grab on your way out. Also, here's a fun fact. In 2011, the Whoopi Pie was named the official state treat of Maine. So, blondies are the butterscotch-flavored cousins of brownies and are also often called blonde brownies. Surprisingly, blondies actually predate brownies. Recipes for molasses-flavored bar cookies, which are considered early versions of blondies, appeared in cookbooks as far back as the late 19th century, before the more famous chocolate brownie took the spotlight. Grandmas often baked these when they wanted a break from chocolate treats. While brownies may have overshadowed blondies for a while, blondies have been making a comeback in recent years. They've become a trendy dessert at cafes and bakeries, where they're often topped off with gourmet ingredients like toffee bits, browned butter, or even matcha. Coconut became a popular ingredient in the US during the late 1800s, and coconut cream pie instantly became a cult classic. This one was really different than Grandma's usual desserts, as it brought a taste of topics to the table. The heart of this pastry was the coconut cream filling made with coconut milk or cream, sugar, eggs, and sometimes a bit of cornstarch to thicken. And no coconut pie was complete without a thick layer of whipped cream on top. Thankfully, my grandma was extra generous with the topping. Some grandmas liked putting their own spin on the dessert by adding a hint of vanilla or almond extract to the filling, or even pineapple for a piña colada-inspired twist. Sadly, today's store-bought versions don't even come close to what Gram used to make back in the day. If you grew up in the South, I'm sure you're familiar with the Hummingbird Cake. Yeah, it'd be a crime if this one didn't strike a chord. So this was pretty much a good old cake with exciting tropical flavors of banana, pineapple, and pecans. Let's be honest, we all get a little bored of chocolatey desserts from time to time, so this one was a good break from the classics. NS. The cake's origins can be traced back to Jamaica, where it was originally known as the Dr. Bird Cake. The name Hummingbird Cake came from the idea that the cake was so sweet and delicious that it would attract hummingbirds. I don't know about hummingbirds, but it had all my attention for sure. I remember begging Granny for this one. This one was a famous choice for weddings, and Grandma's involvement made it extra special for the big day. Do you remember going to the pumpkin patch with your grandparents back in the day? Well, my favorite part about those trips was the pumpkin pie Gram used to whip up afterward. This one was a seasonal favorite and the star of the dessert table at Thanksgiving. Now, this wasn't all the hype amongst kids, but the adults could never have enough of it. During the Great Depression, frozen pumpkin pie became popular because it was a practical way to preserve the harvest and provide a delicious treat throughout the year. But nothing beats a warm slice fresh from Grandma's oven. Summer just wasn't complete without Grandma's irresistible strawberry shortcake. So, this one was a popular choice for picnics, barbecues, and family gatherings during the warmer months, and Grandma was always responsible for it. And just like everything else on the list, she made it absolutely delicious. Many grandmas took pride in making homemade whipped cream, and it's exactly what made it stand out from the rest of the desserts on the table in terms of taste. But hey, this one didn't just taste good. It looked appetizing too, making it the perfect dessert to take to potlucks. Strawberry shortcake is particularly associated with the strawberry season, which typically runs from late spring to early summer. A trip to the farmer's market during strawberry season pretty much meant you were going to have some strawberry shortcakes for dessert. Nowadays, people usually go for strawberry cheesecake, but if you were lucky enough to taste this one back in the day, you know the shortcake didn't just come to play. Let's have a full circle moment by making our way back to another apple dessert. I'm talking about the apple pandowdy. This was a variation of the classic apple pie. The name pandowdy comes from an old-fashioned word dowdy, which means shabby or unkempt. This referred to the pie's rustic appearance, where the crust often fell apart and the filling spilled over. Grandmas have been passing down recipes for this one since the 19th century, but somehow it is finally getting lost in the shuffle of modern recipes. Okay, so last but certainly not the least, we have Brown Betty. Does anyone remember this one? It was pretty much a baked fruit pudding that combined layers of spiced fruit and buttered breadcrumbs or crumbled bread. The most common version of Brown Betty used apples, but the recipe also included other fruits like pears or berries, depending on whatever was in season. The best part? Each grandma had their own way of making this one true to themselves, whether it was a secret blend of spices or a unique fruit combo. So, did any of these classic grandma desserts stir up tasty memories? If so, give us a thumbs up, subscribe, and let's keep those memories alive.